Today, the real culprit. Who's responsible for everything that we have going on? How did this happen to us? People now are in the streets. They're protesting. I warn you, gang, I think we're headed towards civil war. So who's responsible? Well, the left will tell you it's companies like ExxonMobil, insurance companies. The president will tell you it's doctors. Doctors that just cut people's feet off for no reason. The rich, the banks, the companies, the bosses, Israel, of course, Christians, they're out of control. It's talk radio. It's George W. Bush. Got it. The right will tell you it's environmentalists, it's unions, it is the media, it's big government, welfare, Obama, lazy people, Hollywood, Muslim extremists. Well, who is really responsible? Now, here's a problem today that we're working on. I'm looking for the real culprit on what's happening. Media can't find a coherent message from the Occupy Wall Street protesters. They can't do it. We went down there today and we found all kinds of stuff. Occupy together, we're no longer going to take it. Here, you know, we got to be on the side of justice and peace, and the U.S. military aid. This is, again, from the left. It's Israel's fault. This is what democracy looks like. It's cops' fault. This is a really interesting. This is Lord help us. These are from I think that's from the one Christian down there. Well, the number one reason that people are now marching in the streets, I guess, the number one group of people that are marching in the streets are these useful idiots. Now look at these people. This isn't on that person doing muppin chants. They don't find themselves on the front page of any newspaper, isn't it? Secondly, the media doesn't want to find one consistent message from these protesters. You'll notice that they went and, I mean, they had every mildly distasteful sign at tea parties. They proclaimed that everyone was a racist. Everybody who went, you're a racist, man! And then every other sign that says capitalism must be destroyed, you can't find it. You won't see it on television. The evidence is there. You know what the truth is. This is a protest organized by hardcore socialists, anarchists, and revolutionaries to implement hardcore socialism or a new world order. Sure, there's a mixture of socialists and communists and union members and anarchists and few libertarians with dunce caps on, quite honestly. But this is truly about the end of capitalism, pure and simple. You'll also find a few Muslim extremists in the crowd. But if you wanted to find one complaint outside of the economic system that made us the leader of the world, you might come up with student loans, right? That's what they're saying. Watch.
It's just that I have massive school loans debt. I'm probably going to have to take off time from school, which education is the thing that you should not have to pay for.
Student loans are a huge problem for a ton of people. In fact, most people, not just the unwashed socialist protesters, regular people, capitalists, even rich people. It's a problem. Now, that's what makes this a really appealing talking point for the groups organizing these protests and their allies in the media, because it's a regular people problem. All of us have to worry about how are we going to pay for education. Student loans are ridiculous. But now let's go a step further than this. It's theft that we're really talking about. It's corruption and theft. But who's roping you into that debt? Because what they're doing is they're roping us into the debt, and then they're taking that money from you, and they're inflating our money. So you got the Fed, right? You have the Fed, they're doing it. But who else? We have the politicians, because they just keep making just keep promising stuff. And you have, of course, the greedy banks, right? Let me ask you this. Why are student loans so ridiculous? And how ridiculous are they? I mean, yes, you pay your student loan back to a bank. But is the bank responsible for the cost of your college education? Let me show you what I'm talking about here. And I've never seen anybody on TV talk about this. Let me show you the line of inflation. This is 1978. That's today. That's the line of inflation. Pretty much what you'd expect. A general, somewhat consistent rise for prices in the things that you buy every single day. Here it is, kind of goes up. The evil Fed, right? This line's going to shoot up at some point, but it's pretty consistent. Now, our huge financial problems were started by that massive housing bubble, right? It had to burst. It was ridiculous. Watch how we were spending. Here's 1978. Okay? Here you go. You see a little bit right here in the late 1980s. And this was the McMansion period. Remember that? And then this. And it went crazy. This is that huge bubble that almost destroyed the entire country. Prices pretty darn stable. Here it is. Then comes the crash. They go up about the same rate as inflation until about the turn of the century. Then the bubble forms and it bursts. The massive housing bubble that was the first shoe to drop in our economy. We all know what a big deal that was. Now, besides the housing, because we never really dealt with the housing problems. We never really dealt with CDOs. They're still doing CDOs. We never really dealt with Fannie and Freddie. They're still there. We never sent a single person. We didn't even do an investigation on Fannie and Freddie. So nobody's really dealt with this, right? The one thing we did deal with, because we had to get this under control, or we would not survive as a nation, it was the rising cost of health care. Let me show you. Rising cost of health care. There it is. Here's the rising cost of health care. It's been going up at a faster rate than housing. Now, a lot of reasons for that. Innovation, perverse incentives, new and expensive treatments, government subsidies, greed. Yep, all true. And look at how much it has gone up. Here's inflation. There. This line shows that the rise in healthcare has dwarfed the rise in housing prices. So now you can say, okay, well, that's why the president said we had to fix it. Now, I'm not sure why adding more government intervention into healthcare would solve this problem, but that's another argument for another day. We're looking again for the real culprit. What's really behind this? The question we're trying to answer, who's at fault when it comes to the cost of your student loan? Is it the banks? Well, let me show you. Here's your student, here's your, whoa, wait a minute. That's your tuition. You tell me. This line skyrockets above the rise of housing and healthcare costs. It's the cost of college tuition. It dwarfs all the other problems that the media is constantly harping on. When you get a student loan, you're required to promise that you're going to pay it back. The bank tells you up front how much it's going to charge you and what your payments will be. The only one who has control of the amount of loan, the amount of the cost, is who? Because you don't go in and negotiate. They say that's the price, and you either pay it or you don't. The only one who has control of this line are the colleges themselves. They are fueled by a constant societal and media pressure to attend college. Everybody is. That's the theft. Who's roping you into crippling debt? Nobody's forcing you at all to buy a house. No one is. But if you don't have a college education, if you don't have 4 years with this, instead of a .com, you're in trouble. You're not going to get a career. You got to have a college education even if it's not necessary. They're fueled by unending tax dollars. Any politician that opposes more government money for tuition is vilified as anti-education. When this momentum is behind them, colleges can jack up the prices with a never-ending velocity. I mean, look at that chart again. Put the chart up. Tuition prices are rising nearly double the rate of inflation for more than 3 decades, yet no one says anything about that. Not only from the media, but nobody in the government, not even the average person says that. They'll all say it like this: have you seen the price of colleges? It's unsustainable. How are we going to afford it? Those damn banks are greedy. Those damn banks are greedy. The bank is loaning you the money so you can do this. You start your life as a slave to debt, and then you're begging the government to help you take on more debt than any sensible person would recommend before you've earned a dime of income outside of a fast food restaurant. And when the economy goes bad, well, you can't find a job. And you find yourself agreeing with people like this. Look at these people. You agree with them? This is not a coincidence. It's not. Where has I mean, look at the woman dressed as look at the woman jumping with the red. They take a picture of Ben Franklin and put him on the front. They never take a picture of any of these people. Anyway, who has protected the radical revolutionaries of our days? It hasn't been corporations. It really hasn't been government. I mean, when you find a communist in the White House, where do they go? Oh, that's right, Van Jones is teaching at Princeton University. Wait a minute, Princeton University, that's also where the radical revolutionary Cornel West is teaching. And here in New York at Columbia University, of course, you have Rashid Khalidi. And in New York, you also have the grandma making apple pie. What's her face? Frances Fox Piven. Wait a minute. Ward Churchill, we found him at a college too. The same people that running these universities are all the revolutionary radicals. The same people vilifying capitalism, trashing our military, trashing our founders, teaching our children that the Bible isn't true, that the foundation of our country is flawed, that the Constitution is meaningless. They're the same people now encouraging useful idiots to get out on the street and protest the loans that they are paying ridiculous and tenure-protected salaries. Wait a minute. Hang on. So they've caused the problem. Meanwhile, they'll tell you that if you're not a teacher, if you don't have a college education, you're a moron. If you don't have a teaching certificate, you can't possibly teach your children. Yet all the studies show that if you homeschool your kids end up with higher test scores than if they go to regular school. Look at this chart one more time. I know that we built big houses here, 2006 and 8. I know we built bigger houses, houses we couldn't afford. And everybody just started getting in because of the free money from the Fed. We bought a lot bigger and nicer houses than we were building in 1978. Now I know also that surgery is much more complicated. It's much more advanced than it was in 1978. People were dying in 1978 that shouldn't have died. So I know we're doing a lot more things than we were in 1978. But are we smarter? This much smarter than we were in 1978? Have we become a society of Einsteins? Because look at the top line of the chart. Given that we're now spending 10 times the amount for college that we were back here in 1978, you'd think we'd all be Einstein, who, by the way, did the media cover, we think Einstein was proven wrong 2 weeks ago. We used to look at people who were self-educated, like George Washington or Benjamin Franklin, and praise them for their self-reliance. Look at what this person did. But now we say that if you aren't paying tens of thousands of dollars per year and learn from professors with absolutely no accountability, who are no longer even teaching critical thinking, your opinion isn't worth anything. You don't deserve a job here. I want to make this clear. There are great colleges out there. There are fantastic professors as well. But I think I know who the real culprit is. I think I know who's been setting us up and who's been setting up the average student to fail. I hate to be so childish, but I remember when I was, in like 6th grade, we used to say, whoever smelt it, dealt it. Who are the ones that smelt it? Who are the ones who are saying, you got to get out on the street? It's a smokescreen, gang. I think we found the people who dealt it. They're the people who want nothing more than to take your child, indoctrinate. Can you imagine? I mean, think of this. Can you imagine if I set up a system, or if Halliburton set up a system like this? If I could convince people that you couldn't really get a job, you weren't qualified, you were adult, nobody had an opinion worth anything, unless they subscribed to GBTV. And I got the government in with me to give subsidies here. Can you imagine how much this thing would cost over time? And if I could then, when people started getting on to me, if I could then say, go out and get them. Please. If you really want a coherent message about the Occupy Wall Street protest and what's happening to our country, I think we found who dealt it.